Let me tell you something about my wife, Allison. She's the kind of woman who burns sage in the living room, listens to guided meditations while making coffee, and swears that crystals realign the soul. I'm an accountant. From Pittsburgh. I believe in spreadsheets and quiet evenings and paying the mortgage on time. We were opposites, but somehow it worked. Or at least, I thought it did. For most of our marriage, I played the part of the stable rock. She was the free spirit. She'd float from one wellness obsession to another, Ayurveda, hot yoga, chakra healing. I didn't get it, but I supported it. When she wanted to go to her first retreat in Thailand, I told her to enjoy herself. A week without her meant I could eat cold pizza, watch baseball, and sleep diagonally across the bed. Win-win. But after that third retreat, she came back different. I don't mean like refreshed different. I mean too calm. Suspiciously calm. Like one of those people you meet who's clearly hiding something under their zen exterior. Her eyes had this permanent sleepy smile. Her movements were slower. Every sentence ended like she was exhaling truth. And every time she came back from a session with her favorite Thai masseuse, some guy named NOP, she looked like she'd just floated out of a dream. She told me it was healing energy. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But I'm not just a husband. I'm an accountant. Patterns matter to me. And something about her patterns started not to add up. It began with small things. She'd silence her phone when I walked into the room. Start using headphones during calls. Lock the bathroom when she showered, something she never used to do. Then there was the iPad. She never took that thing out of her purse. Ever. Claimed it was her retreat journal, full of private affirmations and self-work. Okay, fine. Everyone's allowed a little privacy. Until one afternoon, about 2 months after she got back from her third trip, she left it in the car. That alone was weird. We'd just come back from Whole Foods. I was unloading the trunk, and there it was, wedged between her yoga mat and a bag of organic mung beans. Unlocked. Now, I don't make it a habit to snoop. I don't want to be that guy. But something about it felt wrong. Or maybe it was just instinct. Maybe it was knowing in my gut that I'd been playing house with someone who wasn't fully in it anymore. So I sat in the driver's seat. I opened the iPad. And everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered in the time it took the screen to light up. The Messages app was open. Not just text messages. Video messages. Pictures. Dozens of them. From NOP. The first photo was innocent enough, just him in a spa uniform, smiling. Then it got worse. Photos of Allison on a massage table, eyes closed, legs exposed. Video clips of them laughing together in bed, in what looked like a resort room. Her voice in the videos was softer, more playful than she'd sounded with me in years. One message she sent him read, "You make me feel things I forgot I was allowed to feel." Another said, "David would never understand this kind of connection." David. That's me. I kept scrolling. It felt like watching a car crash you couldn't look away from. The worst was a selfie they took together, his arm draped around her, both of them sweaty, smiling, and completely unashamed. She was glowing. And not the kind of glow a salt lamp gives you. The kind of glow a woman has when she's found something she never thought she'd find again. She was cheating on me. Not just emotionally. Not just spiritually. Fully. Consciously. With a masseuse in Thailand who probably had a dozen clients just like her. I should have screamed. I should have thrown the iPad out the window. But I didn't. I sat there in the car, hand shaking, trying to breathe through it. My world had just shifted. Quietly, like tectonic plates moving under the surface. Nothing would ever be the same again. But here's the thing. I didn't confront her. Not right away. Because I had a better idea. His name was NOP. That's all I knew at first. Just 4 letters. NOP, attached to a contact in my wife's iPad. No last name. No details. Just a collection of messages and pictures and videos that painted a portrait of something far more intimate than healing hands and essential oils. NOP wasn't some burly gym trainer or slick pickup artist. No, he looked unassuming, short, trim, always barefoot in the photos. Sometimes wearing loose linen pants and a tunic, other times shirtless, with prayer beads looped around his wrist. He had that kind of serene face people think is holy just because it doesn't flinch. But I saw something else. I saw the way he looked at my wife. The smile just slightly crooked. The way his eyes hovered on her collarbone. The way he held her. Not with caution, but with familiarity. This man didn't heal her. He owned her. In the texts, she called him my quiet space. She called me the rock I build on, like I was the damn foundation for some temple she was now worshiping in with someone else. I wasn't the man anymore. I was infrastructure. It got worse. I found a journal entry in her notes app. The date matched the middle of her last retreat. It said, I don't know when it changed, but something about the way he touched my spine. He felt me. Not just my muscles, not just my tension. He felt my truth. My truth. I closed the iPad and stared at the windshield for what felt like an hour. Somewhere outside, the grocery bags were starting to sweat through the paper. The ice cream was melting. But inside, I had already frozen. Numb. I went back inside, handed her the groceries like nothing was wrong, and sat through dinner listening to her talk about kombucha fermentation like she wasn't burning our life to the ground. But that night, while she showered, I pulled out my laptop and started digging. NOP. The resort website listed him under Ayurvedic energy specialists. He was part of something called the Still Waters Collective, which sounded less like a wellness group and more like a cult with matching ropes. I found his staff bio, trained in traditional Thai healing. NOP blends ancient touch with soul intuition. Fluent in Sanskrit, silence, and the language of tension. Language of tension. What a line. I kept digging. The resort offered week-long spiritual retreats, but they weren't cheap. Thousands of dollars. I remembered Allison said she got a discount for returning guests. I now knew what that discount included. Then I did something that I now look back on with mixed feelings. I emailed the resort under a fake name. Said I was a wellness coach from the States. Said I'd heard good things about their program and wanted to experience the healing from the inside. I asked if they were hiring. Said I had massage certification, true, thanks to one online course I took 5 years ago when Allison dragged me to couples massage night at the YMCA. I attached a doctored resume. I hit send. By morning, they'd replied. They were intrigued. Apparently, one of their staff had to leave early for family reasons, and they needed a temporary replacement. Training would be brief. I'd get room and board. No pay, but healing comes in many forms. My hands were shaking. I stared at Allison across the breakfast table as she sipped her mushroom coffee and talked about needing a new yoga mat because hers had absorbed too much emotional residue. She had no idea. None. She didn't know that I was going to the same retreat, that I'd be working in the same spa, that I'd be in the same damn room where she let another man whisper to her skin. I was going to find out just how deep this went, and I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg. I was going to learn his methods, and when the time came, I was going to be the one whispering back. Allison had no idea. That's what stuck with me the most in those first few days. The way she moved through the house with that same airy grace. The way she smiled when she caught me watching her, like nothing had changed. Like the structure of our marriage hadn't already cracked down the center. But I smiled back. I still cooked dinner, still rubbed her shoulders while she read her yoga blogs. I even kissed her forehead when she fell asleep early on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, humming some chant from her last sound bath. She was completely unaware. And that made me dangerous. Because while she was out replenishing her Himalayan salt lamp supply or booking another infrared sauna session, I was planning something of my own. I booked a flight to Chiang Mai, not Bangkok. Chiang Mai, the quieter city up north where Still Waters Retreat was located. I used a different name, Daniel Frost. Common enough. I created a whole identity. New email. Burner phone. Bought a pair of yoga pants online just so I'd look the part. Then I reached out again to the retreat staff. Told them Daniel was eager. Available immediately. Willing to start as a volunteer if needed. They liked that. Said the position was mine. Just like that, I was going undercover in the most passive-aggressive way possible. By day, I worked on my posture. Practiced deep breathing. Watched videos on traditional Thai massage techniques and read way too much about fascia release and meridian therapy. I memorized the script, the vocabulary of healing and alignment and sacred space. I started walking slower, smiling more, practicing silence. If I was going to infiltrate their world, I had to blend in completely. At night, while Allison slept next to me, I mapped everything I knew so far. NOP wasn't just a guy who gave massages. He was central to a system, a business built around spiritual seduction. Still Waters advertised peace, but it traded in loneliness and women looking for meaning. NOP gave them just enough mystery to make them think they'd found enlightenment. And they gave him everything. I created a private folder, compiled screen recordings, copies of Allison's messages, even metadata from the iPad videos. I found one video where he wasn't the one filming, it was Allison holding the phone. Her voice soft, saying, "He taught me how to let go of fear." I watched that clip twice. Once with rage. The second time with resolve. I was going to meet him, but not as her husband, not as the man she betrayed, as a colleague. Let him teach me. Let him invite me in. I'd smile, nod, take notes, learn everything he thought made him powerful. And when the moment was right, I'd flip the mirror back on him. My passport was still valid. I cleared my work schedule, told my boss I was taking a sabbatical for mental health reasons. He patted my back and said, "Good for you." Funny, isn't it? Everyone cheers for healing. No one suspects vengeance can wear the same robes. The week before I left, Allison came home one evening glowing again. She said, "I booked my next retreat. Same place, same energy. I just need it." I smiled and said, "That's great, babe. You deserve it." Inside, I was already packing. Chiang Mai greeted me like a whisper, soft air, distant chimes, the scent of lemongrass woven into the wind. I landed just before dusk. The sky was a burnished orange, and everything felt slower here, like the city exhaled more than it breathed in. It was perfect. Too perfect. I met my contact, Kuan, just outside the terminal. Kuan was a wiry man in his 50s with a permanent grin and a habit of bowing more than necessary. Allison had mentioned him once, back when she first came to Still Waters. He was the logistics guy, the fixer. And when I introduced myself as Daniel Frost, he nodded with recognition I hadn't earned. "We were expecting you," he said in lightly accented English. "You will love it here." I bet I will. The resort was nestled in the jungle, past the humming mopeds and orange-robed monks, through winding roads that seemed to lead nowhere until suddenly, there it was. Still Waters Retreat. A collection of white structures wrapped in silence and green vines. No signage. No welcome banner. Just a stillness so intentional it made your ears ring. My room was minimal: tatami mat, fan, tiny altar with incense. No lock. That was the first red flag. "We believe in trust," Kuan explained. I nodded. But that night, I kept my passport tucked in my sock. Training started the next morning. There were 4 other newcomers, all foreigners. A Frenchman named Luc, a Canadian named Ezra, a woman from Brazil, and me, the American with experience in emotional touch therapy, as my fake resume claimed. The sessions were intense. Not physically, but psychologically. They drilled into us a philosophy that blurred the line between physical healing and emotional intimacy. We were taught how to speak without speaking, to hold a hand longer than necessary, to guide breath. Eye contact wasn't optional, it was required. Connection, they said, is the bridge to restoration. But underneath the chanting and softly spoken mantras, I saw something darker. On the 3rd day, I finally met him. NOP. He entered the training room barefoot, dressed in all white, his hair tied back in a loose knot. He didn't speak for the first 5 minutes. Just watched us, moving slowly, like he was gliding through air. When he did speak, his voice was deep but gentle. Healing, he said, is not about the body. It is about giving people permission to be seen. Everyone nodded like they just heard scripture. I watched him carefully. Every movement was deliberate. Every glance measured. He wasn't just part of the system. He was the system. Later that evening, I asked Kuan about him. Tried to act casual. NOP seems important here. Kuan laughed. He is. Women come from around the world just for him. He knows things. I bet he does. That night, I walked past the therapy suites. Candlelight flickered through bamboo screens. From behind one, I heard a laugh, soft, feminine. A voice said, "I've never felt this safe." And I recognized it. Not Allison's voice, but the tone. That vulnerable, reverent surrender I knew too well. She wasn't the only one. NOP had a gift. He could make a woman feel like she was the only one in the universe. Like she was sacred, cherished, whole. And they gave him everything in return. Their money, their secrets, their bodies. Still Waters didn't just sell peace. It sold fantasy. A fantasy where a woman could be seen, touched, adored, without the inconvenience of real life. No bills, no husbands, no expectations. Just the illusion of being chosen. And NOP? He was the merchant of that illusion. I wasn't angry. Not yet. What I felt was closer to awe. He had created an empire built on loneliness. But every empire has cracks. And I planned to find one. By my 2nd week at Still Waters, I had become part of the scenery. No one questioned me. I was just Daniel the American, quiet, respectful, curious about healing. I bowed when appropriate, listened more than I spoke, and adjusted my tone to that soft, ethereal cadence everyone seemed to favor here. It was a performance, yes. But the truth was, part of me wanted to understand what made women fall for this place. For NOP. For the whole illusion. I started connecting with the clients. Not directly in the massage rooms, that was still reserved for senior staff, but around the garden, the tea lounge, the mindfulness circles. Women opened up here in ways they never would back home. The moment they walked through that bamboo archway, something inside them cracked open. They told stories like confessions. And I listened. One woman, Ellen, was in her 50s, from Seattle. Divorcee. Said she hadn't been touched in 6 years before coming to still waters. She used words like reawakening, rebirth, cellular memory. When I gently asked what made this place different than therapy back home, she smiled and whispered, because here, the body speaks first. Another, Ronnie, from London, spoke more bluntly. He touches places you forget you even had. She laughed, not quite meeting my eyes. And I don't mean just physically. It's like, you think he sees you. Every woman wants to be seen. The more I heard, the clearer it became. These weren't just massages. These were orchestrated spiritual seductions. The sessions weren't scheduled like normal appointments. They were guided connections. And NOP's calendar was always full. One night, I stayed late under the pretense of cleaning mats. I kept to the shadows near one of the therapy suites. Inside, I could hear low voices. Not the kind you'd expect in a healing space, but slower, breathier. A moan, a laugh, a soft gasp, and then silence. Not holy silence. Post-ecstasy silence. The next morning, I approached Ellen again, this time carefully. Do these sessions ever cross boundaries? I asked, gently, as if worried I might offend her. She looked around, then sipped her tea. There are no boundaries here, she said. I paused. But intimacy? Isn't that complicated? She smiled sadly. Maybe. But complicated isn't always bad. Sometimes it's what you need to feel alive again. That stuck with me. I began to document more deliberately. Not just in notes, but in audio. I kept a small recorder in my pocket. When women spoke candidly, I captured it. I saved screenshots from the internal booking system, coded names, flagged guests, energy-sensitive categories. It wasn't just about NOP. There were 2 other male practitioners who offered similar deep work. It was bigger than Allison, bigger than one affair. This was a whole system built around emotional vulnerability, spiritual suggestion, and physical intimacy. It mimicked therapy but lacked any oversight. These women weren't just clients. They were believers. They wanted to be led, touched, undone. And NOP? He was the prophet. By the end of the week, I had enough to make a case. Names, stories, digital trails. But I needed more. Something irrefutable. And then the resort manager slipped. During a staff meeting, she said, "We've had 5 sponsor cancellations this month. Please remind your guests about confidentiality expectations, especially during private closings." Private closings. That was their word for it. The final session. The gift. And Allison's next trip? Just 3 weeks away. Now I had a deadline. Back in the States, Allison was glowing again. She moved through the house like a woman reborn, elevated, ethereal, rehearsing her enlightenment in every gesture. Her routine shifted. She stopped rushing. Mornings became rituals. Herbal teas lined the kitchen counter like soldiers in formation, ashwagandha, maca root, turmeric elixirs. She journaled beside the window, her brow furrowed in introspection. Always barefoot. Always humming. She was preparing. Still waters opened a new week in their sacred renewal cycle, she said one evening, tapping at her phone. I grabbed a spot. I think it's time. I looked up from my book. That's great, babe. You've been glowing lately. This will just amplify that. She smiled, eyes softening. It feels like I'm shedding the last layers of what doesn't serve me, she whispered. And I almost admired the poetry of it. How she could wrap infidelity in a veil of transcendence and call it spiritual growth. The next few days were a blur of preparation. She ordered new linen wrap skirts, a fresh set of mala beads, and a journal embossed with a lotus. She went to a breathwork class and came back sobbing from ancestral grief. I held her, nodding, as if I too felt the weight of some great, invisible wound. We talked more than usual. She opened up about her fears, her doubts, her longing to reclaim her softness. She believed I was the one man on earth patient enough to understand her awakening. She even thanked me for giving her the freedom to evolve. The irony could have choked me. She booked her flight. Thai Airways, with a layover in Tokyo. She printed the confirmation and tacked it to the fridge. Underneath it, she taped a quote. "To return to yourself, you must first leave who you were." I smiled every time I passed it. Then I got to work. I messaged Kuan again, told him I wanted to deepen my practitioner training and requested to stay through the next guest cycle. I asked, gently, casually, to be placed with the group arriving on the 10th. That was her cohort. Kuan was happy to oblige. Daniel, your presence has been a blessing here, he said. Your energy is soft. Our guest feels safe with you. If only he knew. That night, Allison sat cross-legged on our bed, meditating under a salt lamp. I watched her silently. She looked peaceful, whole, as if the universe had finally untangled its knots for her. And I wondered for a second if she ever truly saw me anymore. If the man folding her laundry, cooking her meals, holding her tears, was even visible in her new, elevated world. But then I remembered the videos, the texts, the look in her eyes when she spoke of still waters. She didn't see me. Not really. And in a few short weeks, she would. She arrived on a Thursday. I saw her before she saw me, stepping off the transport van, barefoot already, linen scarf billowing behind her like a sail. Her hair was pinned up the way she always wore it when she felt light. She looked thinner, clearer, like she'd shed something or someone. She smiled at Kuan, hugged one of the facilitators, and placed her hand on her heart as she took in the familiar sights of still waters. I could almost hear her breath hitch with reverence. This place wasn't just her escape, it was her altar. And she had returned to worship. I was not on the welcome team. That would have been too risky. Instead, I waited. I knew her intake routine by now. Welcome tea, orientation, room assignment, energy scan. She wouldn't see me until her first guided session. And I'd made sure I was the one scheduled. Kuan had arranged everything. NOP had a family emergency, he told the staff days earlier. He'll be gone for the week. It wasn't a lie. It was a favor I asked of him, under the guise of giving NOP space to recharge. He agreed easily. He liked me. And with NOP out, I stepped into the slot. Quiet. Unassuming. Ready. Session 1. Guest number 1183. Allison R. Scheduled. 2:30 p.m. I stood in the prep room, hands steady, breathing deep. My heart pounded, yes, but my body was trained by now. I'd practiced the still waters rhythm, the pace, the silence, the way we moved through space like we were underwater. I'd become what she believed NOP was. The door slid open. She stepped inside slowly, eyes half-lidded already, pupils a little glassy from the scent of the herbs burning in the corner. She didn't look at me, just bowed slightly, already in retreat mode. She lay down on the mat, face up, arms by her sides. I moved behind her. The music swelled, soft gongs, a distant flute. I reached for the warm oil, lit the candle, sat on my knees beside her and closed my eyes. Just like we were taught. Center yourself. Clear your thoughts. Then, enter the field. My hands hovered above her shoulders. And then I leaned in close, so close that only she would hear, and whispered the line she once used to describe her most transcendent moment with NOP. I just want to balance your energy. Her eyes opened. Wide. Froze. For a moment, she didn't breathe. And I watched it all hit her, like cold water down the spine. Recognition. Panic. Shame. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at me, at my face, now bare of the NOP illusion, and saw only one thing. Me. Her husband. The man she lied to. The man who was supposed to stay home and support her evolution. The man who now stood, calm and present, beside the very mat where she once found healing. I didn't move. Neither did she. The silence between us was louder than any chant. Then, softly, I stood and stepped back, placing the warm towel by her feet like any practitioner would. Session complete. But the real work? That was just beginning. She didn't blink for a full 10 seconds. Her body lay frozen on the mat, but her mind, I could see it unraveling. Fragments of memory rushing back. The iPad she left unlocked. The sudden retreat I booked for myself. The strange calm I'd carried for weeks. The tea I poured. The suitcase I zipped. And now me, kneeling above her, the candlelight catching the line of my jaw she once claimed felt like home. Hi, Allison, I said. Her breath hitched. Her lips moved, but only one word came out, hoarse and small. No. I nodded. Yes. I reached for the folder beside the incense tray. Crisp, manila, deliberately plain. I placed it on the floor beside her hand, careful not to startle. These are divorce papers, I said quietly. Already filed. I signed. You just need to. She looked at them like they were a snake. Her hands trembled but didn't move. You followed me? She asked, voice trembling. No, I said. I preceded you. She sat up slowly, her face pale, eyes wide and searching, like a child lost in a place she thought she knew. Her gaze landed on the candle, the oil, the mat, the reality of it all pressing in. This was real, she whispered. You touched me. I didn't. She blinked again. I saw relief flash across her face, twisted, broken relief. But I could have, I added. And that's what you gave him, isn't it? Her shoulders sagged. She looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I said nothing. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew words wouldn't land anymore. She wasn't speaking to me out of love. She was reacting to the loss of control, the unraveling of a fantasy. What is this? She asked. Some kind of revenge? I took a breath. No. It's clarity. I stood. She remained on the mat, like she didn't know where to go. She reached for the folder but stopped halfway. Her fingers hovered. I don't know who I am anymore, she said, more to herself than to me. I looked down at her, not with hate, not even with pity, just with finality. I know who I am, I said, and I'm done being invisible. She looked up at me again, searching, hoping for some hint that this was just another lesson, that maybe I'd cry, or kneel, or beg. But I didn't, because this wasn't a lesson. This was the closing of the book. I walked toward the sliding door, paused, then turned once more. Oh, and Cohen knows, I added. Her eyes snapped wide. What? I told him everything. Not about us. About the system. About NOP. About the recordings. About the women. The panic bloomed across her face like wildfire. You'll destroy them. No, I said. They built this. I'm just handing them a mirror. And then I left. Walked down the stone path in silence. Past the koi pond. Past the chanting hall. Past everything that once felt untouchable. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Revenge isn't rage. Not really. It's patience. A quiet hand placing the last domino and walking away before the chain reaction begins. When I flew home from Thailand, I left behind more than a retreat. I left behind a loaded truth. Before I departed, I sat down with a local Thai attorney recommended by someone I trusted from my weeks at the spa. I handed him a drive with everything: footage, logs, screenshots, even whispered testimonies from guests who thought they'd found enlightenment but instead got entangled in something closer to manipulation. He didn't blink. He only nodded, like he'd seen these stories before. We'll forward it to the appropriate offices, he said. Silence is expensive, but fraud costs more. I returned to the States and waited. Within 2 weeks, Thailand's revenue department had opened an inquiry. Their findings lined up. Still Waters had been funneling untaxed money through fake donation services and booking foreign workers without proper credentials. Worse, NOP and several others were operating under multiple names, with unverified work histories. The raid came swiftly. Within a month, Still Waters was officially suspended. No more chanting retreats. No more energy sessions under bamboo ceilings. And NOP? He was arrested. Turns out he wasn't even a Thai citizen, but a foreign national posing under a Thai alias. No paperwork. No taxes. Multiple fake identities. The Thai immigration authorities processed him for deportation, with a firm blacklisting from re-entry and a flagged international status. He didn't expect that. He thought the worst he'd face was a scandal or two, maybe an angry spouse or a bad online review. But he hadn't planned for someone who understood how to turn paper trails into a sword. And Allison? She returned to ruin. Our joint accounts had been frozen. She landed in the U.S. to a notice of divorce, her access revoked, and a court summons tied to her spiritual investments in what had become a criminal case. Some of those wire transfers she made? They weren't just generous. They were fraudulent. She tried calling once. I let it ring. Then came the message. Please, I didn't know. You don't understand what that place gave me. But I did understand. It gave her someone else. That's why I gave her nothing. The divorce was finalized quietly, within 3 months. Her yoga network dissolved. Her social channels dried up. No more sponsored retreats, no moonlit wisdom quotes. Just a frozen smile on an old profile photo that hadn't been updated since. Me? I didn't just leave. I stepped forward. The sea doesn't speak, but it says everything. After the storm, I moved to a small coastal town in Maine. One of those postcard places where the grocery store clerk knows your name by the second visit and boats out number cars. I rented a cottage at the edge of a bluff, painted blue with white shutters, the kind you'd find on a calendar and think, no one really lives there. But I did. I started over. I opened a modest accounting office on Main Street. Shoreline Financial Services. Nothing flashy, just a brass sign, a pot of lavender at the door, and a reputation for discretion. I kept my head down, helped local fishermen navigate tax season, guided small businesses through audits, and once helped a couple retire without losing a cent to the IRS. People here don't ask too many questions, but they notice things. They notice how I walk slower now, how I listen longer, how I always pause before answering, like I'm choosing not just the right word, but the kindest one. They notice that I don't talk about my past, and they respect that. On weekends, I sail. At first, I had no idea what I was doing, just me, a stubborn sailboat named Mercy, and a YouTube playlist on how to handle sheets and halyards. I capsized twice, nearly lost a phone, got sunburned where I didn't even know I could, but I kept going back. There's a moment when you catch the wind just right, and the sails snap full, and the boat lifts, just a little, just enough, that you realize you don't have to outrun the storm. You just have to face it. I've changed. I don't check her social media anymore. I don't wonder who she's with, or if she meditates under different moons, or if she finally learned the difference between a guru and a con man. I don't need to know, because I'm not the same man who once stayed up at night trying to decode her silence. I'm a man who now trusts his own. If I could offer anything to someone going through what I did, it's this. Listen, not to their words, but to the air around them when they speak. Truth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shivers. Sometimes it's the quiet that screams. And if something feels off, it is. Don't wait for proof to protect your heart. And never underestimate the quiet man. He might be carrying the loudest plan in the room.